Hello, my name is Carolyn Yarina, and this is another Tuesday Tidbit presented by Regroup Advisors. Today, I'm going to talk with you about grant writing and how to approach fundraising through these sources of non-dilutive funding. And so when you start approaching your grant writing strategy and how to bring in funds, you need to think about it as more than just submitting an application. Just like with any other customer, when you're looking to bring in funds, you need to understand that customer. You need to build relationships and network and understand the people behind the application. Because the truth is, when you're writing a grant, it's just like any other business interaction. There's people behind the scenes that are doing the assessments, that have existing preconceived notions about the companies that are applying or what companies to look out for that are coming through. And this applies to whether you're approaching a federal grant, a state grant, or a local foundation or competition. And when you're approaching your grant, it's best to outline and understand what are they asking for and why are they asking for it? And make sure that you're answering those actual questions. If they're asking you how you're impacting the energy economy, answer that specifically and answer it in order, because these reviewers are reading a lot of applications. They're going through and they want to check off boxes, and they almost are looking for reasons not to fund your company because they need to cut down and make some tough decisions on who receives that funding ultimately. And this comes back to why those relationships are so important to have at the beginning, because if there's a question, if there's a consideration, if you have a relationship there, it's possible they might ask you and clarify, where if you're just a cold application, the reviewers are only relying on what you actually wrote down in that application. And so when you're going through, you want to make sure that you're making it easy for them. You're learning what motivates them and answering it that directly. And then another topic to consider about grant writing is what type of entity are you approaching and where are you looking for funds? So a couple of really helpful resources are to consider what types of grants are out there. You can really break these down on a broad basis into federal grants, such as NIH funding of military as well, local or regional grants, and then nonprofits and foundations. And finally, I won't talk much about here, but also competitions and awards fall within this non-dilutive sort of grant competition funding category as well. And so in going through those, a couple of resources that are really helpful to dive into and understand what are those resources are, one, looking at grants.gov for that basis of and database of different grants that are available. But again, make sure that you have relationships that you can advocate for and understand those grants and those opportunities. The second are Department of Commerce and other state SBA websites, as I have referenced in previous podcasts where I've talked about exporting or other programs that are local to your environment. And then finally, you can talk to, on a very local basis, to your local, if you're in Michigan, your SMART zone, or if you're in another state, to that local economic development agency that can direct you to those most appropriate funding sources as well. And so these are all really great resources to start approaching your funding strategy. And I've been through this process before as a startup founder, as a CEO as I founded 2 previous companies, and I've also been helping other companies as a consultant and thinking through their funding strategy and helping them secure different grant funding. But when you're approaching your funding strategy, it's important to understand what's out there. It's important to understand your customer. But the final piece is make sure you're not wasting your time. Look at the amount of funds you're getting, the timelines, the level of effort, but also read the fine print. What are those IP restrictions? I've been there as a startup founder. I've gone through the process, went through the rigorous back and forth of filing the grant application, waiting for the response, doing the due diligence. And we got to the final fine print, and we discovered that there were IP restrictions that were taking rights to our intellectual property of our product. And ultimately, for one grant, we actually had to turn that down because that fine print would have impacted our ability to raise investment funding because we would have lost some of the rights to our intellectual property. That's another Tuesday Tidbit presented by Regroup Advisors. I look forward to talking with you again soon.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Business Plain and Simple Tuesday Tidbits by Regroup Advisors and don't want to miss future topics, well, like and follow us wherever you get your podcast. Interested in learning how Regroup Advisors can help your company? Contact us at info@regroupadvisors.com or online at regroupadvisors.com.